All right, thank you very much for still being here with us. Right now, we dive to a very important conversation. We're talking about, the out of school children, and very, very vital if you ask me, because as they say, children are the leaders of tomorrow. And when we keep saying they are the leaders of tomorrow, and we fail to give them the barest, equip them with the capacity, everything they need to eventually lead tomorrow, what does that make us? A failed nation, if you ask me. We want to have this conversation on, inclusive education and the out-of-school children, taking them back into the classroom. And we're not doing it alone. I have an education correspondent, virtually, of course, speaking to us, NAFISAT. She's going to be here to, help us understand what it takes, what the whole, situation is about, the exact, modalities needed to take children back to the classroom. We're talking about this because 2027 is by the corner. And one of the things that the president or this current administration has told us or has campaigned with is the fact that they have looked into the education sector. They've been able to contribute their own quota. So maybe this is that very aspect we want to also table to them so that they understand that at the grassroots level, this is one of the ways to actually impact, them. So I'm joined by education correspondent Nefisa. You're welcome, ma'am, to the conversation.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Good morning. Welcome to Global Morning. Okay, let me just go straight to what we have today. When we say out of school children, what does it truly look like, for the everyday Nigerian community? I want you to help us paint that picture. If you have at some point interacted with them, if you have at some point intersected with, people from that class, what would you describe out of school children in Nigeria today as?
Okay, so when we say out of school children, it's not just the statistics, it's that child you see in the traffic, okay, selling pure water. When we say out of school children, is that child you see roaming the streets? Is that child you see begging? And is that child you see sitting at home doing nothing? So it's not just about the statistics, it's about the realities, the children we see. And when we say out of school children, it means children who are supposed to be in their various schools at home doing nothing or doing some of the things I just mentioned earlier.
Not every child has to go to school. There are people that do not have head for book, according to what some people would say. Do you think that it's we can allow some children? It's important to just follow children according to their needs. Are there situations where we would say we can exclude children from education?
Well, like the popular say, school na scam. School no be scam. Like every child needs basic education. Okay, maybe if we want to say after the secondary school, like here in Africa, or let's say in Nigeria particularly, it's certificates over skills. You need to have certificates to be able to do a lot of things you want to do. Even if you're not going to work with your certificates, education will really, really reflect on whatever is it you're doing. So talk, for example, someone who is not very, very good in their academics and has decided to go for vocational skill, it's going to be a plus when he or she is able to communicate with their customers, is able to put some concepts into branding. So education is very, very important. Yes, we know some may not work with it, but it's something every child should have access to.
Administration, I don't know if in any way you have seen efforts, to take children back to the classroom. Recently, one of the prominent, ministers came out to say, "Oh, we need a certain amount of money to be able to, take them back to the classroom," and ultimately making it look impossible. Do you think, if you were to advise the federal government, I'll ask this before my colleague jumps in, but if you were to advise the federal government, one of the things they to talk about with this administration is that to an extent they have paid attention to the education sector. They have brought about NEL fund. They have tried to be in agreement with ASU, an agreement that has lingered for years. Even if when you ask ASU, they would say they have not really seen all of that materialize, even if they've signed agreements. But at least it's an effort to sign that agreement. We're waiting for the latter end of that. But I ask myself questions like, when you talk about NEL fund, this is something that's accessible to people that can even go through the primary, secondary, write WAEC, write JAM, write the NECO, and eventually get into university. Yes, it's a good thing, but you have not clearly, reached out to some people that cannot afford education. Some people that are, that decides to leave school because their parents do not have money to take them or to train them in school. If you are able to access, if you're able to cater to the needs of the grassroots, I'm not saying those universities are not part of the grassroots, but there's a foundational level to this thing. So if you were to meet with this administration or maybe the Minister of Education in tackling out of school children, what would you advise?
Okay, I was reading something about the recent research. I don't know how recent, maybe last year or 2 years. It's really alarming that Nigeria currently has about 18 to 20 million out of school children. That means 1 in every 5 out of school children globally. It's really, really alarming, and it is something that Ministry of Education should be doing something about it. So if I have opportunity to have a meeting or be in a conference with the ministry, what I'll be talking about is going back to the grassroots, just like you've said. The foundational stage is very, very, very important. Once we get it right in the foundation stage, like offering access to quality and quantitative education for the early years. Once they have that foundation, once it is solid, those children will want to go, and it has to be a kind of education where all the structures is put in place. Like, for example, I'll take some states. I'm not going to be mentioning some states. Some states in the West have really, really imbibed in this free education by even adding incentives to make these children want to come to school, like free health, free food, and training the teachers to ensure that they are able to tap into what those learners will be needing. I'm also going to niche down to a particular local government here in Lagos State, where we have a school that is run by the LCDA, and it has been in existence close to 8 to 9 years now. It's a free education. So everything that a child needs, it's free. The only thing the child needs to do is just to pass the entrance examination. Once the child is qualified, you're rest assured that everything that the child will be needing, school uniform, school textbooks, exercise book, everything that a child needs, so that there's no excuse, because it's not just about providing free education. It's not about bringing all these policies, bringing huge amounts of money. It's about ensuring that we provide these children and the parent, because poverty is one of the major factors that has really, really led into this huge amount of out of school children. Aside what we have, the insecurity issues, then advocacy is very, very important. So the ministry has a lot to do with the grassroots, ensuring that the first foundation of a child, the early years, is solid. Once it is solid, and those children, in fact, we've seen cases where even when the parents are saying, no, go that school again, the children say, no, I want to go to school, I want to become this, I want to become that, because education has become part and parcel of them. So it's very important that it's not just about bringing out huge policies, huge amount of money, but also looking at the realities of what will suit the realities of those children.
All right, so good morning, NAFISAT RASAQ. And I have just a few questions for you. So how has insecurity and displacement contribute to children being out of school?
We all know that over 100 of schools with the advent of this insecurity. And the federal government really needs to take drastic action, like serious action to providing security. For even the teachers are scared, you never can say what is going on. You can be in the school today and the next day, everywhere is not safe. So we need to use community leaders, sanitization of community leaders, advocacy, letting them know, and also use technology. Technology is very important. I know it can be a capital intensive, but we have even children who have never been to school are very intelligent these days, with the use of technology or use of radio, they can learn. I think we had that during COVID-19, where children were learning through radio and internet. And the parents can also learn too. It's something that can be done to keep those children safe at home. I know sometimes people will say even the homes are not safe, but at least wherever it is they had, children will have access to learning if we use technology to make children learn. If it is morning, and then there are a lot of other areas that we can look into, providing worksheets, textbooks that can help children learn on their own. I just hope that these things will be looked into, because it's really alarming, and every day everyone is scared of going back to school because we never can say what will happen the next day.
When we also talk about out of school, sometimes we neglect the fact that there are people in school but out of school. If you go to the government schools, some of them try to, you see them jumping windows, jumping every kind of barricades that wants to restrict them into that classroom and try to escape. There are children that just look for a way out when you eventually want to enclose them, and for them it doesn't work. And maybe part of the reasons they give is maybe they don't have teachers that are up to the task of keeping them, because most of those government schools, you see students bullying teachers. It happens a lot. And these teachers at some point become powerless and allow the students to do whatever they want to do. So you see them escaping school. They have been paid, their school fees have been paid for by parents, but somehow they run away and they're out of school even if they're in school. So how do we tackle that kind of menace of children, parents that put in the effort, government facilities or government agencies that put in that effort to put children in school, but somehow they don't want to stay there? Is it a problem of the staff members, the civil servants, the teachers that are in that environment, the school leaders that are in that environment? Who do we apportion this blame to?
Okay, so I'm not going to apportion any blame to anyone, because all hands has to be on deck in this kind of situation. Just like the topic implies, inclusive education. Every learners have different ways of learning. It's just about understanding what makes a child learn, how a child learns. So when I was reading through, I was just thinking, how many teachers even understand most of the learners that they take? How many teachers, so firstly, the children are already in the school. The school has to understand how those children learn. Even sometimes, most of these children that we say are very difficult and are jumping through the fence and making trouble, they're just calling our attention. Some of them, if studies have shown that some of them are probably going through mental issues, emotional issues, secondary school, they are adolescents, they are having hormonal changes, everything is upon them. So they're seeking attention. So it depends on a teacher who understands how to tap into all those learners to understand what they truly need. You will realize that no matter how stubborn we call some of these children, there is just a teacher that will understand, or there's a teacher they will always stay to listen to them when they talk. You get, so it's all about learning and understanding what makes them tick. So now, for parents too, the parents are also supposed to understand the kind of children they have. So you cannot You cannot have a child who is still struggling, who is a late bloomer, going to a very, very academic school where the only thing they think about is academics. They don't have extracurricular activities that will be like a soft landing for the child. So the child is not feeling like, oh, the only thing I've come to do in this school is just to learn. Or when we talk about inclusive, we have a lot of learning disabilities for children who are struggling with dyslexia, dyscalculia. We have a lot of um learning disabilities that children struggle with. I mentioned about mental issues, which we've not even talked about, which are, so children are struggling with a lot of things, and then we bundle them with a lot of academic things. They'll definitely look for ways to tap out. And the attention span of the learners we have these days, it's so small, unlike back in those days. And they're not scared, you get. So yes, back in our days, we used to have children too who were not ready to stay in the class. But there is definitely something that they will be interested in. And that is why we should have all aspects of education for our children, the vocational skills. You see, some children will do well when it is time for sports. We had those times back in those days, we have clubs, we have press club, interactive club, jet club. Then, a lot of hands-on activities that will really allow those children to engage with their hands. And you'll be surprised that during the process, you will get to understand what these children, what will catch their attention to stay back in the school. And the government also has it, especially in the government school. The government has a lot of role to play by equipping most of our schools, our government schools, with a lot of tools that will enhance our teachers to be able to put our learners through this. Some teachers actually know what to do, but when you don't have tools to work with, it's just like going to a farmer who goes to the farm and does not have tools to to farm. So what is he or she going to work with? And then to the general society, we a lot of advocacy should be ongoing on how we can parent children and how we can help them learn. Overall, everybody should share out of the blame, because we should understand the kind of children we have and give them the right kind of education that will help them learn better.
Our parenting, our parents losing faith in the value of education, most especially with the high rates of unemployment in the country.
Yes, obviously, especially with the advent of internet now. I can just be on the internet, dance or do funny skits, and not just the parents, even the children do funny skits, and I have millions of viewers, and I'm already into reach, making huge amounts of money. Yes, there's a bit of discouragement even from the parents and the children and everybody that, okay, what's the big deal after education? What do I get? Well, okay, back in those days we used to say if you come out of first class, I bet you if we throw out an advert now and ask that we want 1,000 first class graduates. Well, we'll get more than that. People have gone to school to study. Where is the job? For those that have even gotten the job, the work ethics, transport, the salary is really, really small. You are wondering, hello, what am I going to do with this? So it can be a bit discouraging. That is why our curriculum also has to be very robust, not just putting children to learn just how to go to school and start searching for white collar jobs. We also have to engage them with a lot of hands-on activities, letting them work with their hands, and that is why I will really, really go back to some of those clubs we used to have back in those days, most especially Jet Club, inventors, inventing things. I know it might not, we'll say it is not really flying. And then using of entrepreneurship skills in schools, letting children understand that you can start up a business, you can save, money education, buying and selling. It is even in mathematics, doing practical examples with the children, buying and selling. These little things will plant in ideas into the children, and eventually, when they are done with school, a lot of them will not just want to wait for white collar jobs until they can earn living. And also, I always hammer on vocational skills, and soft skills. Soft skills, most especially speaking, engagement, and the rest. So, overall, school, like these days, there's this popular saying, people will say school now scam.
Okay, I don't know if you can hear us, ma'am. Quite an interesting conversation there. I like the fact that we're talking about it holistically. When we hear out of school children, the only thing that comes to our mind is those people that are hawking on the streets, that refuse to go to school, the ones that don't have money to go back to school. But I want to also buttress the fact that there is school, out of school, even with children that are in school, have been sent to school and the environment is not interesting at all for them. They just find it boring, and that's why she's talking about. We're also talking about inclusive education. Inclusive education is not just carrying everybody along, but making a robust kind of system where you have different varieties that can attract a child. If the child is not the bookworm person, he's the one that likes sports. If he's the one that doesn't like sports, he's the one that likes to talk. There's a presenting or press club for that child. If you just know that in that environment you will have what you will see what you like, and that thing that you like will keep you there. But the reality of this is that we have this kind of things only in the private schools. You will not see. The government school, they are trying to bring in all these entrepreneurship courses and all of that. But is it enough? Because if we just channel, business and business and business, what about other fun activities? Because you can't make it all serious, right? So children, there's a way to get to them, and it has to be that you are giving them a variety. They say variety is the spice of life. I don't know if you're there with us, ma'am.
Yeah, I didn't hear that.
Okay. So I was speaking with someone recently, and maybe I start by sharing a story of a lady I recently encountered. There's this girl that came to stay with me. A very funny story. I'm sharing it here. But while she was staying with me, she's about 18, thereabouts, according to her. I don't know how true, maybe 14, 15, 30, I don't know. But the auntie says, I want her to be with you. And then I asked, do you want to go to school? She said, no. I told the auntie, I want to send her to school. The auntie said, she doesn't have head for school, for book. I'm like, okay, how can I engage this lady? Because they say an idle mind is a devil's workshop. So I went to the tailor, a tailor close by. I said, okay, would you like to learn tailoring? She said, yes. I said, are you sure you can learn tailoring? Because I was thinking of, should I engage her with makeup? Maybe other needs, because I know tailoring can be a bit intense. But she was really excited and she wants to learn tailoring. So your head cannot carry book. And then after interrogating, I decided to, have faith in her, and then I enrolled her. 1 week, when I would inquire from the tailor, she said she can match the machine. She's doing well, she can match the machine. I was like, this is impressive. She did all of that. She was able to catch some of the hard things. Then when it got to measurement, that was where the drama began. When it got to tailoring is about measurement. So she could match and do, work. But she couldn't measure. The auntie will send herself ready to measure me, and I'll be seeing numbers that are more than the tape. She's using to measure me, and at some point I just knew basic education is very important and key. So I not related to I said, are you sure you need to go back to school, because you cannot sew tailor, you cannot do it except you want to be an obioma. You just go, also just go and repair people's clothes, since you can match machine. But you will think that for some people that the operation might be difficult, but for her she was able to grab it. But the basics of tailoring was very difficult for her. The foundation of the basic arithmetic, basic literature, of course she could not write. If the article will write all the parts of the body, the bust, the shoulder. If you see what she will spell, just to copy and paste. You will give her the words. Like can you write it out here? You would see, I feel like she invents her own letters. She used to invent
Technology.
technology. So I'll ask her, did you go to, what class did you finish? She said she wrote common entrance, she was about to go to JS1.
I like that.
I said, you finished for my sis like this. She said, yes. Can you spell her name? No, she cannot spell her name. What's your name? She will say her name is Precious. I spell it. She will start spelling the native name. I said, but I just knew that I knew this was supposed to help me, but I'll use my energy to help you, because the help you give me, the one I will give to you, more than the one you can ever give to me. And I was not in that space for that. I was still trying to manage my, but you know, working with humans, if the basic education is not there, they can mess other aspects, you know, of your life up, and everything that's put in their hands. So it just, I now asked her, I said, when it comes to basic education, I mean, it starts from even as little as daycare, as little as crèche, you know, and in that space, I'm like, okay, what if even the government has facilities that, you know, helps mothers, good facilities? I mean, there are private facilities there, but what about parents that cannot afford those private facilities? Do we have government nursery school? I don't know if I've seen any. Do we have, I know it starts from primary 1 to, I don't know if I've seen nursery 1, nursery 2, nursery 3, you know, with our government setting. Not to even talk of, you know, a day class or a baby class. These are the things that in the Western world, in other climes, they take so seriously. So, Mama, I don't know if you want to add to that, you know, what I'm saying, basic education and how invested our government is to make it work.
Okay, so I was actually laughing here when you were talking about her going to the tailoring. I knew the measuring would be an issue for her. That's what we call concept. And that was why when I started that, education is very, very important, even if you're not going to make use of it later on in life. I remember my dad used to say, if you eventually want to, after school, if you eventually want to sell tomatoes, the way you arrange your tomatoes and package it will be different from someone who didn't go to school at all. You get it. You see a lot of concepts coming these days with people selling basic things, and you'll be wondering that, hello, where is this idea coming from? So it goes back to the basic, and that is why the early years is very, very important, and we've been advocating for this. You were saying that I've seen some states with nursery public schools, but it is not as strong as what we have in the private sector, because that is where the basic things, basic concepts of numbers, letters, and where they will build foundation on. Because once it is shaking, it's just like, let's give it a practical example of when you're building a structure and you didn't do the proper laying of foundation. Obviously, it's all going to crumble, or it will be half baked. So we, just like you were saying, we need to go back to the drawing board. If it is going to be just primary school that we're going to have, what is the age range that we are admitting children in the government schools? What is the curriculum? What is the scheme of work that they get to learn? Yes, education age helps learners to learn fast. So if they are going to have access to basic structures of how to learn their numbers, learn their letters, how to read, like the lady that stays with you, will have been able to use our letter sounds to spell our name, you know, use our basic concepts of mathematics to do a lot of structuring. So the government, I usually say, cannot do it alone. Honestly, the private school has been helping, and especially in the areas of providing the nursery schools, daycares, and the rest, so that children will have access to learning. But we obviously also need to work on the schemes that these children get to learn in the government schools. And then the teachers, there are every day education is revolving, new theories are coming in, new ways of putting children to learn things and faster ways. And just like your co-presenter said, technology has really helped, you know, in enhancing learning. So most of those teachers, do they know how to operate, use technology to teach, and for them to be able to teach the learners? So it's a whole lot of things that I know we cannot get it all at once, but once we have a laid down structure of this is what we want to do, we give ourselves a time frame. Okay, let's get this done. Not dropping everything. If we keep dropping everything, I usually say that you can't even expect that you train teachers within a period of time and expect them to start running with the ideas. Change is a very, very difficult thing, even especially for adults. We have to give them a time frame to keep working on it, until they get perfect with it. So education is very, very important, and most especially our future is at stake. I look at the girl child, how education has really, really empowered the girl child in having our own means of um, financial fund, not relying on just her husband if she's married. I see how education has really, really helped our communities, our children,
Right,
it
ma'am.
has really, really done a lot of things. And it will be very, very important that the government really, really work on this. And our community leaders, our religious leaders too, have to be involved in this, especially in some parts of the areas in Nigeria where they still feel the girl child should not get education. It's
Thank
just,
you very
it's
much,
beyond
ma'am.
what we,
Thank you, ma'am.
yes, it's even beyond where we say
Thank you
if you
so
empower a
much.
girl child, you empower a nation. It's way beyond that. Like it's just a
Okay.
generational benefit.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for that. Thank you, thank you, thank you. This is how far we can go, but I mean, it has been an insightful, engaging, educative information and segment of the show. For those who don't know, Nafisat ABDUL is a seasoned administrator. She's an early years educator and trainer for over a decade, with over a decade of experience shaping learning environments and empowering teachers. I mean, she's one of the best we can have on the show today. So I want to say thank you, ma'am, for coming to share your
Thank you
insights
very
with
much
us.
for
And
having
for
me.
viewers, I hope you have learned one or two, especially for parents, watching this. We will go for a quick break now, where we return to the APC convention analysis. I want to call it that because there's a lot to get from the events that happened, yesterday. But let's go for the short one and we'll return with a guest to that regard. Please stay with us.
Thank you.